Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this meeting. I have with me today Ellis Pratt, who is an expert in the AI area. And this chat is about the leadership chat with Alice on how we can scale our teams using AI. And I would turn it over to Alice for the introduction. Alice, would you like to share a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Thank you for the kind introduction. I work for a director of and co-own a technical writing services and training company called Cherryleaf. We're based in the UK. I'm just outside of London near Heathrow Airport. We've got a location down on the south coast in Brighton. About April time, we were being contacted by a company that was looking to offer an AI solution for technical authors, and that really prompted us to look into AI. We have actually documented two AI products as it happens, but from I guess May onwards, what we worked on was a training course, an e-learning course on using AI in technical writing, which we launched in September. So our focus has primarily been on creating a course for other technical writers.
Awesome. So thanks for sharing that. I have a few questions for you, and that would help the audience, all those who are listening to this meeting. So have you witnessed success with any AI experiment for your team? Would you like to share that?
So we are slightly different in that we are a technical writing services and training company. So we're going from project to project doing stuff and for clients. So that affects what we can and can't use. And we've also been doing stuff for the training course in terms of creating proofs of concepts of what is possible. And we have also been using it in our own business, primarily from a marketing perspective and a research perspective, where we need to create stuff for our website or introductions to various things. So let me go through some of the things that we've used it for. For us and in general for technical authors, where it can be particularly useful is with messy content. So what do I mean by that? Things like we will get walkthroughs from subject matter experts of products, and we'll be desperately scribbling down or recording the call to understand what the product does, and then we have to either generate a transcript using Microsoft Word and then use that to edit, or from our notes, and that takes time. One of the things you can do if you use generative AI and set it up in the right way, customize it, is you can actually get it to convert transcripts and walkthroughs to a rough draft of instructions. So it can the tasks, the prerequisites, and so on. So that's one time saver. Another thing is copy and pasting. If we're given content which is in PDFs and project documents and the like, and we need to get product specifications, that type of thing, out, we can ask it to do that. Also look at content and say, are there any duplications in this content? And even if things are not exactly worded in the same way, it's pretty good at spotting where things are similar or identical. It's quite good at that. We've just introduced or installed a local version of a large language model, so we can do some more stuff locally. Because of the NDAs we sign, we are limited for project work what we can ask an LLM, a chatbot, to do, because we shouldn't be putting up company confidential information. Other things, welcoming and onboarding emails. We were asked to review and improve some onboarding emails for an API. So people requesting to get early access to an API, change the password, get on the waiting list, and so on. And it was very good at writing things or giving suggestions of how that could be written in a softer tone. We've done some proof of concepts for creating a chatbot which only uses a repository of information, so it doesn't hallucinate, and another one where it can take from a user profile what somebody's operating system is, whether they're a beginner or advanced, whether they're using the pro or light version, and then providing answers on that. And in part of doing that required writing some Python code, and all of the code effectively was written by asking a combination of Claude and ChatGPT what that code should be. And one of them, it worked successfully. The other one, it was going to a large language model called Ada. We wanted to go to ChatGPT, and in doing that, we messed things up and needed a little help for a programmer to say, no, the endpoint's wrong. That's where the mistake lies, and fixing it that way. It's also quite handy if you need to explain concepts. You want some suggestions, again, sort of first draft level of what is meant by this or that. It can give you hints and suggestions in that ways. Generating backgrounds for the e-learning videos, we've got the green screen behind, and then we can replace that with a fancier background, and so we used it to do that. Those and on the e-learning course to generate some multiple choice quizzes from the content. It's been useful for that. So those have been the main areas where we've used it and seen it being used within our business and within a technical writing perspective or context, I should say.
Those are great examples. So what I see is that you're clearly seeing productivity gains from some of the stuff that which is more like something mundane that can be automated, and something that gives you a head start rather than looking at a blank screen. You're seeing those benefits.
Yeah, you're right. It's very good at doing mundane, repetitive stuff. Acting, excuse me. Well, Microsoft says Copilot. Excellent description of what it does. I've heard it described as being like an intern that you can call upon to do things. And also, one way, what it gives you, I mean, there's a lot of fear about AI, but if you put it in this context, if somebody came to you and said, here, would you like a tool where you can just write in simple sentences a set of instructions, and that enables you to do lots of technical things you were never able to do, like code, create images? Would you see that as good or bad? And most people say that's brilliant. I mean, that just reduces barriers. That means you don't have to wait for other people to do these things. You can do them yourself. And that's what these generative AI tools give you. But because it's also seen as a threat and it's unfamiliar, people do have concerns and worries about it. But it does make it possible for people with a clear idea and the ability to write clearly, the ability to do technical things that they just weren't able to do before.
Yeah, that's so true. So what are your thoughts on how this will change our industry in the short and long term?
So I think it will blur the lines between, so there's two sides. There's the productivity aspects of creating content, and then what are the deliverables? And I think one potential change will be with the deliverables. It might be that it's just used to do a different type of search, where when somebody searches on a knowledge base, it summarizes answers from multiple topics and gives you a summary of them. But the potential is for personalized help and advice for users when they get stuck, to guide them through. And then you've got, well, where are the lines between training, between support, and between online help? And those lines are going to get merged. And it may be there's one solution that covers all of those things. In which case, who runs this project? Who's going to lead and create this chatbot and keep it up to date? It's an opportunity for technical writers to lead and to be involved. But there's also a risk that it will be owned by training or owned by support, and that there's less consideration to what the technical writers do. They're just seen as contributors. So I see that as one big area. The other is the information gathering of messy content, the transcripts, and the mess of documents that you can often be given and asked to turn that into usable content, and it will help in that area. Those are probably the main changes that I see. Maybe less reliance on developers if you need to create code samples in API context. Those ones I would say are the primary ones.
Yeah, I think those are some great insights. So I had a few more questions and just reading through some of my notes based on the discussion that we've had earlier. So there were certain risks that you talked about in terms of who owns content and who drives the whole, who's sitting in the driver's seat. But beyond that, there are certain ethical things that we need to take care of. So how can we ensure that our AI systems are ethical, fair, transparent, and accountable?
Well, it is a important question, and I'm not sure if in the context of if we look at purely the context of what technical authors do in creating content that will be used by an AI or it as a tool to help us create content as an AI, whether they are involved to the same extent as others in the ethical situations. One is the problem of hallucination, and you can mitigate or minimize that by using, there's a technique called retrieval augmented generation, where you say to the chatbot or to the chatbot or large language model, only use this content to provide the answers. So don't use your knowledge from your data set, don't make things up, but only answer from that. So we can use that to help in minimizing situations where it gives incorrect information. In terms of the other sides, I think it's going to be honest, driven by others. Each organization should be creating an AI ethics policy for when AI is used within the business or delivered to customers, and also when its subcontractors should be and contractors should be using and interacting with AI as well. And it should come from government bodies, and where there are organizations, there's an organization in the UK called National Cyber Organization, I think it is, and they're meant to be creating some guidelines for organizations to follow. So from a perspective of an individual creating content or that would go into a chatbot or creating a chatbot, I'm not apart from making sure that it's just using authorized correct content, I think it's difficult to know what else they can do. But that doesn't mean the question isn't important. But I don't have a useful answer, I'm afraid, for that.
No, I think you provided some interesting details or insights about how it can be used. And these are practical ways of looking at things. And it's an evolving area. We totally understand that. And as things evolve and more people start using it, we will know what are the challenges that people face, what are the ethics related questions that people answer. And you can always learn from others' best practices. So I think it has to be all hands on deck, where more people contribute to it and share it out with more people around them.
Yeah, and I think also it's true of, going back to something else we said, but true of all IT systems, they need, again, it's good if you treat it as good at a first draft rather than the final draft, that there's oversight in any content that AI is creating that's going to be used elsewhere, that it is signed off, as it were, or reviewed, so you don't end up with prejudices and other things creeping into your content that might have come from the AI systems.
Sure. You talked about the large language models. I know not many people probably in the industry be aware of that. Can you expand a little more on that? Plus, do you think that the base functionality of large language models, which is LLMs, provide what you need to generate documentation? Or do you need to provide customized logic and input to ensure good results? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so there are chatbots like ChatGPT and Claude and Pi, and when you can go to the sites and you can ask a question and they provide an answer. The way they provide the answer is they send a prompt or request to something called a large language model. So there are ones like GPT-3, GPT-4, With Google, they've got Palm. Meta has one called Llama. And what they have is a data set of information, which is essentially content that's been converted to algorithms or vectors. And when it provides the answer, it's not working like a search engine. It's actually doing a mathematical calculation of what is the statistically most likely word to follow the word that came before, or answers responds to the question that somebody's asked. So it's generating mathematically answers to what people want. So within those data sets, they have billions and billions of data that can be there. I think 70 billion in some of the larger models. Now, that has lots of data in it. It has data from poetry, from literature, from technical writing, from user forums and instant messaging and social media. As you say, one of the things you can, so as a consequence of that, it can give answers which are rather wordy compared to what you want in instructions. So one of the things you can do with some of these chatbots or instructions that go to large language models is you can customize them. And one of the things you can do is say, act as if you were a technical author, write in a clear and succinct way. And what that means is, if you look at that big data set of billions, you can get the large language model, to only focus on the bits which are not literature and poetry, but the bits which are about instructions, and then use that. And so by doing that, you can get it to generate answers which are more clear, succinct, and optimized towards instructional content that you'd want for user assistance.
Interesting. So do you think that the structure of our content can improve or hinder the use of LLMs? Is there anything that we should be writers doing a little differently when we write our content for AI?
So that's a very good question. So it's more forgiving of messy content. So that might mean that we can get more messy content from subject matter experts, and it can deal with that. That's one thing. But the way in which large language models are designed is they're trained basically on a before and after. And as a consequence, what they like is questions and answer pairs. So although FAQs are disliked by technical authors because it's bad information design, it ends up as a miscellaneous section of where things are just dumped, and they're not always questions, they're not always frequently asked. In the context of large language models, actually having questions and then the answers is the type of content that they like. So what we may see is more of that being created to feed into the large language model. And so that's probably the likeliest change that we'll have, is more question answer pairs to help train the large language model.
Interesting. Also, another thought that comes to mind, that so when you are using these AI and large language models, are you kind of expanding what you cover in documentation because AI has made your efforts more efficient? Or are you providing the same coverage but with less effort?
That is a very good question. And I think the jury's out on that at the moment. Internally within Cherryleaf, a lot of what we're using it for is more marketing side of things, and it's meaning that we can do marketing more quickly. Within the context of technical writing projects, because of NDAs and the like, we haven't used it so much. It does give some gains in terms of productivity, particularly, as I said, with walkthroughs and transcripts and taking that and making it more efficient. How much, I don't know in terms of what that productivity gain is. In terms of quality of output, it's unlikely to make a huge impact on the quality of traditional knowledge-based content, step 1, step 2, step 3. Where the likeliest improvement in quality will be the opportunity to offer a chatbot as well as a knowledge base in that way. But I don't, at the moment, it's hard to quantify how much of a time saving it's going to provide in the future.
So what would be your message? This will be one last question, by the way.
Yeah.
What would be your message to the leaders of content teams about how do they get started in this area? How can they think of AI as a tool that can help them scale?
Best thing is to practice and try. I would say look at and this is common stuff with any sort of new technology, look at the problems that you face today that where you waste time, are doing things where you think it's not productive, and investigate whether AI could help you with those. If you've got, back to what we said, if you've got messy content that you're getting and you're finding you're having to do a lot of copy and pasting or rewriting of content from other people, then look at how that could look at using generative AI in that way. I would experiment with different services. Claude is very good, particularly with text. There's a significant difference between GPT-3 and GPT-4, so it's worth stumping up the $20 a month to use that. There's our training course, which of course I would recommend people take. There are some interesting videos on YouTube from people sharing. A lot of that at the moment is around generating images and videos, which aren't so relevant to a technical writing context, but there's people talking about how it can be used in education, which are quite good. I think the area to avoid is styles and standards. Where generative AI is not so good is trying to create a style guide and enforcing that. You're probably better off sticking with whatever tools you've got in terms of linters or tools like is it called Affinitext, Acrylinks, or Grammarly and the like. Those stick with those tools. But I would look at the things that you find take you time and are mundane, and see what you can, and see if it can help you save time in those areas.
Awesome. I think those are fantastic tips, Ellis. Thank you so much for sharing those. I really like the fact that you not only shared what you should do, but you also shared what you should not do. And that helps in a big way. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate that.
You're welcome.